What do tofu soles, black market sneakers, and an emotional bald eagle have in common? Stick around. This isn't your average economic meltdown. Meet John, proud owner of 3 MAGA hats and a tenacious gig worker with fragile entrepreneurial dreams that run face first into the Tariffpocalypse tsunami. Just as John's sneaker biz was about to go full Shark Tank boom, President Trump slaps tariffs on his raw materials like he's swiping left on global trade. One minute he's designing eco-friendly soles, the next he's Googling, how can I make shoes out of ramen noodles? Now he's broke, bootstrapped, and about to pivot harder than a yoga instructor dodging rent, student loans, and a parking ticket from 2019. Welcome to Tariffpocalypse, where dreams get taxed into oblivion and ambition wears eco-friendly duct-taped plastic shoes. Welcome to the Citizen Sage Politiverse, where politics and history meet a deeper analysis of the current events shaping our world. Let's dive in. Meet John. He's a gig worker, a dreamer, and an inventor of what he swears will be the next big thing. Eco-friendly, ethically sourced sneakers called Freedom Kicks. John is resourceful and ambitious. If Elon Musk in a thrift store had a baby, it would have been him. He's ambitious and crafty yet broke, and one really good YouTube tutorial away from greatness. John delivers groceries by day, Ubers by night, and scrolls Alibaba listings during lunch breaks looking for affordable soles, laces, and insoles from Vietnam. He's saved up $3,000. The plan? Start his own sneaker brand by summer 2025. But as fate would have it, his startup dream is about to be hit by a high-speed, tariff-forgetting freight train named President Trump Tariffs 2.0. Make America Great Again. On April 2nd, 2025, President Donald J. Trump stands on a stage in a red hat and a power stance yelling in the mic at a Florida rally. We're bringing jobs back, folks, starting now at 10% tariffs on all imports. And for countries like China and Vietnam, 25%, maybe more. We're calling it Liberation Day. The crowd roars. John screams, not in excitement, but in horror. Vietnam. That's where his cheap souls are. John was a die-hard Trump supporter. He had 3 MAGA red hats, a MAGA bumper sticker on his Uber, and could recite the Apprentice theme song like the national anthem. He believed in America, apple pie, and tariffs, especially tariffs. Bring back manufacturing, he'd yell while handing out DoorDash orders to confuse customers. They just didn't understand why he was screaming. He went to every Trump rally, rain or shine, economy up or down, he was there, hooting and hollering like a patriotic hype band. But this one hit hard. As President Trump shouted, we're putting 25% tariffs on Vietnam, effective immediately. John froze, eyes wide, face pale. His Freedom Kick soles were from Vietnam. In slow motion, he reached for his beloved red cap, the very symbol of his hope, his dreams, his identity, and peeled it off like a sticker on a clearance item. The crowd cheered. John panicked. Somewhere in the distance, he could have even swore he saw a bald eagle crying. He turned, walked out of the crowd, handed in his hat, his dreams in shambles. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He didn't post on Truth Social. I'm not giving up, he thought. I'm just gonna pivot. So who's orchestrating the tariff tempest? Donald J. Trump, the 47th president of the United States. Again. Yes, he's back in the Oval Office and so are the tariffs. Because nothing says economic strategy like taxing import goods to make America fair again. But here's the plot twist. This isn't just about Trump. It's about a recurring theme in U.S. trade policy. Protectionism. Protectionist trade policies are like fashion trends. They just keep coming back. The U.S. has a history of using tariffs with mixed results. As mixed as a bag of trail mix. Each time the ripple effects have been significant. But not in a good way, at least not for businesses that rely on imported goods and the consumers that buy them. So what's on the new tariff hit list? Universal 10% tariff on all imports. Higher country-specific tariffs ranging from 11% to 50%, targeting nations with significant trade deficits with the US. And a 25% tariff on imported automobiles and auto parts. The idea? Make foreign goods pricier to nudge American companies into producing domestically. The potential snag? Economic reality might hit harder than a caffeine crash after a double espresso. Within days, tariffs go live. John's inbox starts looking like a financial horror film. Prices jump 30 to 40%. Shipping costs skyrocket, and his main Vietnamese supplier ghosts him with the final message: too many taxes, cannot ship. Goodbye. He is not deterred and reaches out to supplier after supplier, only to be met either with ghosting or quotes so high they make Ponzi schemes look like charity work. So he attempts to pivot. But domestic suppliers quote him prices that make him physically ill. $40 per soul? He could literally mold them out of artisanal tofu for cheaper. But now, even tofu's expensive. Meanwhile, grocery trips are like walking into a dystopian museum. Eggs, $15 a dozen. Milk, $20 a gallon. Bread, $10, and it's the bad kind that sticks to your teeth and is laced with questionable chemicals. Gas prices are up too. Culprit? President Trump's new tariffs on imported oil-based products. John feels like he spent more money fueling his car than his body. Can John find an American-made supplier before his startup dies in the womb? Or will Freedom Kicks become just another freedom fail? By 2027, determined to fight on, John goes full Uncle Sam. He finds a domestic manufacturer in Ohio. They love his vision and charge him $75 per pair to make his shoes. John asked, "Is that with or without laces?" The Ohio factory rep says, "That's just the stitching. Laces are extra." But fine. He'll DIY. He learns how to cut, glue, and stitch in his basement while binge watching YouTube cobbler tutorials. He manages to assemble 100 pairs. He launches his Shopify store, his tagline, "Freedom Kicks," for feet that still believe. He sells 12 pairs. Why? Because everyone's broke. By now, the full effect of the tariffs are in motion. Tech prices are insane because President Trump also slapped a 25% on semiconductors and electronics. That means John's secondhand MacBook, which he used to run his entire store and his life, was now dead and banished to a blue screen, will now cost him $3,000 to replace. One day, mid-DoorDash hustle and halfway through delivering a $77 smoothie, John's car gives up on life and wheezes to a halt like it just remembered it was 14 years old. He coasts into a mechanic shop where he's informed, with the enthusiasm of a funeral director, that his ride needs a new alternator. And maybe your hopes and dreams too, John thought. As he shelled out $3,200 of business money for the imported part, the mechanic threw the additional bill at him. He didn't want to get beat up. There was an additional $800 charge for import fees. Go Tariffpocalypse. So what's going on? U.S. manufacturing didn't come back. The cost to invest in factories didn't make any sense, so companies relocated to countries not on the tariff list. Congress is trying to fix the quote-unquote tariff dodger problem, but without much success. The supply chain has regular and monthly hiccups where goods disappear from shelves for months on end. China, the EU, Canada, Mexico, and every other country solidified their retaliatory tariffs, killing American exports. Now Americans have more bacon, tofu, and corn mush than they can stand. The unemployment rate has skyrocketed to 30% thanks to tariffs, business shutting down, and AI taking over jobs like a robot army. The corporate conglomerates went back on their promise to augment workers instead of replacing them. To prevent the country from turning into a real-life game of Survivor, the government introduced universal basic income, because nothing says we've got this like paying people to just exist for now. The economy is basically a wrecking ball at this point, and the government's response? Well, they're just doubling down on tariffs like they're playing a game of who can make things worse. Meanwhile, they're also trying to convince companies to do business in the US, even though it's about as profitable as running a lemonade stand in an uninhabited desert. But hey, at least they're sticking to their game plan, sort of. So how's John faring? His groceries still rising faster than a crypto scam in a Reddit thread. His rent? It's on a never-ending hike, probably training for the Olympics. His bank balance? Think Mariana Trench, but somehow with less life. And yes, that's after his never-ending gig work, and that's after selling 50 pairs of his $250 shoes per month. And after his latest car repair, he doesn't even know how he's going to restock his Shopify store. Sadly though, let's be real, we saw it coming. John's back to delivering pizza at night. In case you were wondering, he works 19 hours a day, survives on gas station coffee. He hasn't seen REM cycle sleep since 2023, and yes, he's still single. But hey, he's not just surviving, he's aggressively chasing a dream on fumes and mozzarella grease, because he can't afford actual cheese. Can John pivot again before he has to rebrand his sneakers as Freedom Flip-Flops, made from recycled Amazon boxes? By 2030, John has transitioned to being a black market sneaker mogul, selling his Freedom kicks with new tricks and dodging US custom risks. John's dream has mutated. No longer a bright-eyed startup founder, he's now a street-level sneaker dealer. He makes his kicks with 30% local materials and 70% mystery imports snuck in from Tijuana by the cartel tunnels. Only the most expensive parts, by the way. The few US manufacturers that still exist have basically become luxury item artisans, like blacksmiths in the apocalypse. Except instead of swords, they're crafting $2,000 toasters with Wi-Fi. Why, you may ask? Because mass market goods are a no-go. It only makes business sense to sell things with ridiculous profit margins to the 5 people rich enough to still buy them. Then, another trade announcement drops from the government. 50% tariffs on suspicious goods from tariff-dodging countries. I guess Congress finally got around to passing a bill. Mexico? Well, they're on the list. Prices for John's hidden supplies triple overnight. His side hustle gets sketchier. He's now dodging Border Patrol, Customs, and Amazon ad policies. So what does our guy do? Naturally, he pivots to selling shoes on the dark web under the alias Tariff Johnny. He's not just hustling, he's cyber hustling with encryption. The business picks up? Well, kind of. Meanwhile, universal basic income is still a thing, which sounds cool until you realize it's like giving someone a garden hose to fight a house fire. People get their monthly check, sure, but by the time they're done buying groceries, paying rent, and get around to fixing any of the planned obsolescent appliances that continually break every week, they're back to zero. The cost of living is outpacing universal basic income like a Fast and Furious movie on steroids. A used Honda Civic from 2025? That'll be $75,000. No, thank you very much. Want a smartphone? Better choose between that or a down payment on a moped. Inflation isn't high, it's base jumping without a parachute while flipping the bird at the Federal Reserve. There is talk about hyperinflation, but the government just isn't ready to admit that yet. People are cracking under pressure, like old phone screens. Depression's through the roof, which doesn't matter because no one can afford a roof anymore. Drug addiction is up, theft is as casual as jaywalking, and prostitution is basically a side hustle now. Society didn't break, it just got super glitchy. But hey, people are coping by diving into immersive entertainment. VR headsets strapped on, living in fantasy worlds where they own homes, eat avocados daily, and don't scream when they check gas prices. Tariff Johnny may be toe deep in the underworld of black market sneakers, but at least he's not trying to sell a $4,000 purse in a country where eggs cost $80 a dozen. And John? He's wearing prototype Freedom Kicks 8.0 built from leftover stadium seats and duct tape. I know you're wondering how, but he's very crafty and actually made it work. Can John survive in an underground market with zero stability, or is he one bad sneaker bust away from becoming a federal footwear felon? It's not like there weren't historians and theologians around to tell the government that they were going on the wrong path. There were plenty. They continually told the government that you're on the right track for wanting to improve the economy, but you're heading full speed in the wrong direction. Like GPS said, make a U-turn, and they just floored it. These brave souls were out there waving red flags like runaway workers at an economic airport, but nobody cared. They got on every platform imaginable, TV interviews, YouTube explainers, Instagram reels, probably even TikTok dances about tariff damage. They're basically screaming, "This ends badly!" while everyone else was busy arguing in the comment section. It was like warning someone not to microwave aluminum and watching them crank it up to full power anyway. They provided example after example of the following. The early days. Tariffs were a side hustle in the late 1700s to 1800s. Back when powdered wigs were all the rage, tariffs were basically America's main source of income. No IRS, no income tax, just good old import taxes. The idea was simple. Tax foreign stuff, build American industry, and maybe fix some roads. The result? It worked. Sort of. Industry grew, but farmers got cranky when their exports got hit with retaliation tariffs. The Tariff Abominations of 1828. Yes, that's an actual name. It raised tariffs so high that southern states were like, we hate this so much, we're just gonna secede. Spoiler alert, they actually did, but for much worse reasons. The result? Political chaos, economic division, and a lot of yelling in old-timey accents. The Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930, the Titanic of trade policy. During the Great Depression, Congress thought, hey, you know what will help a collapsing economy? Tariffs! They hiked them up on over 20,000 goods. The result? The country slapped us right back. Global trade crashed, the depression got worse, and basically it was the economic version of kicking yourself in the face. Really. Post-World War II, the let's chill with the tariffs era. After World War II, we realized maybe global trade isn't the enemy, and so the US helped form institutions like GATT, later the WTO. Tariffs were reduced, globalization took off, and Americans got cheap TVs and t-shirts. The result? Economic boom, strong global alliances, and your ability to buy a microwave for $49.99. 21st century tariffs make a comeback, 2018 to 2020. Enter President Trump administration, which brought tariffs roaring back, especially against China. The goal? Revive US manufacturing and punish unfair trade practices. Tariffs hit steel, aluminum, electronics, washing machines, you name it. Result? Some short-term boosts in select industries, but overall, higher prices for businesses and consumers, retaliatory tariffs on US goods, and confused farmers trying to sell soybeans in a trade war. So here's the big takeaway. Tariffs are a double-edged economic boomerang. Yes, they can protect key industries or correct unfair trade, but use them wrong, it's like trying to fix a car by setting it on fire. They often raise prices, spark trade wars, and hurt the very people they're meant to help. So next time someone says, slap a tariff on it, make sure they're not trying to fix a leaky roof with dynamite. And after all this information, charts, graphs, emotional TikToks, a guy in a suit crying on live TV, the government still kept going. Just like a plushy vending machine at Chuck E. Cheese with a stuck arm, they just would not let go of the toy. Logic? Ignored. Expert advice? Tossed in the recycling bin. It was as if the entire federal decision-making process had been replaced by a magic 8-ball that's only said, tariff harder. You can hand them a 600-page report entitled, Why This Is a Catastrophically Bad Idea, and they'd skim it, nod solemnly, and then say, so you're telling us more tariffs, right? Now, if you thought it couldn't get worse, welcome to 2032. Years after weaponized tariffs, the world decides, you know what, let's ditch the dollar. Yeah, let's do that. China, Russia, Brazil, and half of Africa begin using the yuan or new crypto stablecoins for trade. Global reserves shift. The dollar? Well, it drops like a horrible 90s mixtape no one asked for, straight into hyperinflation. Imports become even more expensive. The Fed prints money to calm the chaos. Inflation goes thermonuclear. McChickens are now $108. Gas is $240 a gallon. Bananas come with financing options. The economy used to be in shambles. Now it's basically dust with a LinkedIn profile. There's barely anything left except overpriced iced coffee and broken dreams. A whopping 70% of the population is surviving off of the universal basic income, which kind of sounds nice until you realize it's just enough to afford a rent-stabilized shoebox that costs $10,000 a month. And who owns the building? Some soulless mega corporation called something like Nest Corp Omniliving, which also owns your fridge, your toothbrush, and probably your dreams. Most people walk around like NPCs in an existential crisis, numb, disoriented, and held together emotionally by a single trembling spiderweb over the fire of late-stage capitalism. Purpose? That's a luxury now, like organic food or dental insurance. Meanwhile, crime is the only thing booming. Drug abuse is higher than rent. Homelessness has its own zip code, and prostitution is now considered gig work with benefits. It's like society tried to patch a sinking ship with duct tape and motivational quotes. And now we're just floating in the wreckage watching TikToks to feel something. So, what about John's freedom kicks? Now costing $3,000 to make, he was forced to use a US supplier for all his materials as he barely escaped the crackdown on the dark web. He sells them for $6,000. Celebrities call it post-collapse fashion. Yeah, that's a thing in 2032. TikTok hashtags and all. But John doesn't feel like a fashion mogul. He feels like a guy who just wants to make affordable shoes and now lives in a converted shipping container behind a crypto mining warehouse. Still single, still kind of broke, but he can at least buy a MacBook Pro now for $20,000. Not to mention he is the only customer to his US supplier and they may go bankrupt at any moment. Kind of scary. Will John finally catch a break? Or is 2039 bringing one last curveball to crush his soul and souls? So, President Trump's long gone. The Smart Trade Act of 2039 finally repeals most of the blanket tariffs. Sanity creeps back into economic policy like a stray cat everyone thought was dead. John? He's older, balder, but wiser, and finally managed to get married with kids. He relaunches Freedom Kicks. This time, he's got subsidies, real trade deals, and access to global markets, and global market raw materials. So what happened? Well, government finally stopped playing peekaboo with reality and decided to stop pretending it had dementia. One day, it collectively looked in the mirror, slapped itself twice, and said, all right, let's stop being insane. Instead of lighting money on fire and blaming each other, they rolled up their sleeves and did something radical. Use common sense. They started encouraging small business growth instead of crushing it with regulations, written in Cleon. They invested in research, development, and wait for it, education, which had been mostly replaced by influencer boot camps. New technology started to emerge that weren't just new ways to make coffee. The government had even played adult Lego and helped reassemble the shattered pieces of the supply chain so it was slightly easier to do business without crying. They also threw some serious cash into infrastructure, roads, bridges, fiber optic cables, whatever it was that keeps toilets flushing in stadiums. They needed massive loans to pull it off. They got some from China and some from the African Union. Probably a guy named Clarence with deep pockets, but hey, they made it work. The economy went from dust back to shambles, which sounds bad, but it's actually a huge improvement. Only about 40% of the population now relies on universal basic income, down from the everyone and their grandma levels of 70% 7 years ago. And with shiny new tech like free energy devices finally seeing the light of day instead of buried in the warehouse next to the Ark of the Covenant, government started training a futuristic workforce. These folks are now being exported around the globe like high-tech Pokemon, no tariffs included. America's still got work to do. Businesses and supply chains aren't quite majestic again. But there's more comeback story than cautionary tale. For the first time in 15 years, people are dusting off their dreams, daring to believe in maybe, just maybe, Googling how to start a small business instead of how to move to Canada, or even Africa. And finally, after 14 long years of sweat, inflation struggling, and being economically gaslit harder than a reality show contestant, John does it. He pulls off the impossible. He sells 10,000 pairs of shoes in 1 month. And not from some ridiculous dark web only price, but for a totally reasonable 100 Ameribucks. Yes, Ameribucks. Because at some point the government looked at the flaming disaster of the US dollar and said, you know what this means? You know what we need? A rebrand. So they scrapped the old currency like a failed NFT project and launched Ameribucks, a whole new form of money actually backed by gold. Not hopes, not vibes, gold. The shiny stuff you see in pirate movies. Suddenly, inflation stopped breakdancing across the economy. Prices stabilized, people could afford both shoes and food in the same week, and John, he wasn't just a gig worker anymore, he was a legend. Tariff told Johnny had officially become America's favorite footwear mogul. Powered by pure grit, futuristic currency, and a deep personal hatred of import taxes. On his 50th birthday, John holds up a shoebox and whispers, built for the grind, priced for the semi-broke. He finally did it. Tariffs sound tough, but if you ask John, he will tell you. They're hell on dreamers, killer of startups, and the reason eggs become a luxury good. Trade smart, dream hard, and never underestimate the cost of saving a buck by taxing the world. Let's be brutally honest. You can't tariff your way to glory. Slapping tariffs on everything isn't some magic cheat code on reviving American manufacturing. You can't just yell "America first" into a microphone and expect factories to rise from the cornfields like economic zombies. We live in a global economy in a multipolar world. And in that economy, American businesses are up against countries where labor costs are low, regulations are chill, and nobody charges $8 for a gallon milk. Companies have spent decades building global supplier networks, like really complex, incredibly fragile Jenga towers held together by shipping containers and shaky trade agreements. Try to rebuild that overnight or even in a few years. Yeah, good luck with that. Especially since some raw materials don't even exist in the US. You can't grow rare earth minerals in Nebraska. Know how many bald eagles you throw at the problem. And guess what? We export stuff too. So when countries get ticked off or retaliate with their own tariffs, boom. American farmers, tech workers, and small businesses get economically undercutted into oblivion. And seriously, why would anyone slap tariffs on goods businesses literally can't source in America? Like, congratulations, you just taxed something we don't even make. That's like charging someone for extra air and then telling them to just breathe locally. There's no secret underground titanium farms in Iowa. Coltan isn't going to magically sprout in your backyard because you waved an American flag at it. Don't even get started on manufacturing. Half the machines we need to manufacture stuff have to be imported too. It's like putting a lock on your toolbox and throwing the key into a volcano. And shea butter? Sure, let's grow it in Nebraska. That'll go well. And you can't just will raw materials into existence just because you're mad at another country. It's not Roblox. You can't just go outside and hope titanium shows up in tall grass. And coffee? Do we even grow coffee here? We don't think so. If caffeine disappears tomorrow, society will collapse faster than a cheap lawn chair. So maybe, just maybe, tariffing essential stuff we don't even make wasn't the master plan it sounded like at the press conference. Ignoring these basic realities I've just outlined doesn't mean you're not a patriot. It makes you a reasonable person, just like John, who was selling black market sneakers out of the back of his Prius. Want real change? Well, why don't we try this? Build physical infrastructure so companies can, ship things. Invest in AI to help workers, not replace them with iPads wearing hard hats. Support emerging tech sectors so America leads with brains, not bluster. Fund R&D focused education so folks like John can invent things before their credit score files for unemployment. And for the love of God, and all that is caffeinated, stay away from tariffs until you actually know what they do and how to use them properly. They are not toys. This isn't economic Legos. You can't just slap tariffs on stuff and hope it builds a factory. Tariffs are like a chainsaw, super effective in the right hands, but on the wrong hands, boom, you've just sawed off your entire supply chain. So before you start waving them around like you're starring in Tariffs the Musical, maybe take a minute to learn what they actually do. Because, spoiler alert, tariffing everything until America makes its own titanium and espresso beans is not a real strategy. It's actually a cry for help. Because if we keep going down this path of economic cosplay and tariff roulette, John's 2025 nightmare may show up a lot sooner than we'd like. And this time we might all be delivering pizza and duct tape sneakers despite our 12 master's degrees in business, computer science, and chemistry. So, guys, what do you think? Are tariffs a bad idea? Am I being too hyperbolic? Would you wear freedom kicks? Let me know in the comments. And please, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.